Coffee Talks. It's a game where you are a barista in an alternative universe where everything goes as normal. However, there are ogres, there are werewolves, vampires, all sort of mythological creatures exist in the real world, and you are going to serve them coffee while listening to their stories. Today I'm going to be talking about both of the games. One released in 2020, the other in 2023. And well, I find them both to be super interesting with a very nice sense of pace, a very good soundtrack that I have sort of maybe started to listen to outside of just playing the game. And well, it also includes its own fair share of genuinely heartfelt moments from the characters both in-game and the way they're written, but also just the general atmosphere it builds up. So, I hope you'll enjoy this, and let's just get right into it. Starting off at the proper starting place, the beginning, we're going to be talking about Coffee Talks 1. In Coffee Talks 1, you're very quickly introduced to the game mechanic as your first ever customer comes in, being called Freya. Freya is the woman you're sort of going to be following throughout the entire game as she writes her new book. And she'll be coming to your coffee shop where she has been coming many times, and you'll just be serving her, listening to her talk and come up with ideas. Throughout the game you're gonna meet a bunch of different people and different quality of people, and when I say that I mean they do a lot of different things. Some of them are game development. There is a really meta part of the game where you're sitting with this girl, a fish girl to be exact, who is talking about her game development experience and how people in general like smaller indie games when they are getting tired of the main industry of games. Something I definitely personally related to. But then you also cut over to a part about relationship advice, where a vampire who have existed for a while gives some genuinely good advice, and sometimes it genuinely feels heartfelt, as in you start to feel alone with these characters because everybody has a story, and that's sort of the game's moral. It tries to convey their stories and whatnot through that. And while I can't say if it's personal experience, I don't know the developers or anything like that, I can definitely say they're relatable in a lot of ways. And in Coffee Talks 1, the one character I found myself constantly endearing and liking was Hyde. Hyde is the vampire I was talking about. He has a very direct way of talking, and in one of the scenes where you're talking with this succubus who is with an elf, where the elf's parents doesn't really want the relationship because in the game's universe, elves and demons don't really go well together, and elven people in general look down on everybody else as they are both immortal and they generally come from high standards. And this particular elf is with a succubus, a demon, and well, in the game he wants to leave his family so he can be with her, and that sort of plays out, and they end up talking about it because the succubus is very family centered. And in the game's universe, you see this succubus called Lua. She's sitting and talking, she's talking with you, the main protagonist, the barista, about it. And well, then Hyde comes in and is like, excuse me, but don't you think you're asking a lot here? Because she doesn't just want a good relationship. She doesn't want him to leave his family for her because she's scared that he could blame her further down the road for that. But as he points out, this is not a fairy tale. Like in real life, you have to make sacrifices, and if he's okay with making that sacrifice, how is that not okay? And I think it's a really nice way to convey it. And I'm trying to be vague because the game is a visual novel to a high degree, and it's only in the most loose terms it's not a visual novel. And I don't want to sort of spoil and ruin the entire thing for everybody else. So that's why, if it sounds really weird, that's why. But yeah, And he comes up with all of these things, and it's like that throughout the entirety of the game. There's always a message you can sort of take to yourself. And some of them definitely hit harder than others. As somebody who comes from a not as well off family, I've definitely been in the situation of being scared that somebody's family wouldn't accept me for who I am. And it's something that you can definitely relate to when it then happens in the game. And there's a lot of these sort of weird and very human, well, parts of it, because it is a very human game. It's a game that's, I like the word human for it, but in truth it's very relatable, where you can sit down and you can go, I can recognize this. I have experienced similar feelings to what the game is conveying. And it's a very rare thing to see. The last game I really played that did that was actually the Milk series, where it conveys a story in such a way where you feel like that's experiences you can relate to. And it's only helped by the music. And speaking of music, as you all know, I love talking about music, especially throughout these views. I'm gonna play just again 30 seconds of one of the very first songs you'll hear from Coffee Talks 1. And let me know what you think about it, because I absolutely adore it. Now, what did you think? Please let me know in the comments. Yes, that was my plug. If you sort of like me found that to be a very good vibe, I highly recommend just getting the game and not thinking too much about it, especially if it's on sale. While it might not last you for more than 4 or 5 hours, it's definitely a game that I see myself returning to eventually. Because very much like people you've gotten to know throughout your life, I could see myself like missing the vibe that this game gives off, the atmosphere. Because it's a rare one. It's one that isn't done often, where it's sort of cozy, sort of relaxing, and everything just plays into that. You're making the coffee, and as the steam is rising from the cup, it's so good. It's so good. And that's just the first game, right? Because you see the pixel art in it, so I've seen some people dislike it because they use a 3D image in one of the trailers, where I have to completely disagree. I think the pixel art adds to the feeling of the coziness, right? The way the characters looks, it's perfect for the personality. 10 out of 10 on that front. Visually, it's stunning. While you won't be seeing a lot of the world, it's an interesting one, because every day you start out with, you see the newspaper and you can read the like headlines of what's going on in the wider Coffee Talks universe, right? And they add all of these interesting things, such as racial tension between werewolves and vampires, as an example, right? Or how werewolves have this thing called fury, which is when the full moon is up and whatnot, and how some substances that they use to like calm this are like dangerous for werewolves, and how it's discovered that this medicine is dangerous, and then you follow that for a couple of weeks. It's really cool. I really genuinely like it. I find it so interesting, and it's also why it's so good when you like start to read into it, and you can see like, oh, but they're talking about the events in the game, and then you look into your phones, because if you haven't noticed, there's a phone on the bottom of the screen. If you click there, you have your Coffeepedia, you have your music selected, but you have Tomodachi. I might be butchering that, I probably just did, but you have this app, and it's a social media app where you can read everything your friends are doing. They expand a lot more than Coffee Talks 2, but you can essentially read what your friends are doing and like how they are, who they are, get a little bit of some background info, their birthday and so on. And it's also wholesome. I absolutely adore it. Even with the very real vibes it can give off, it's perfect. It's such a good blend. And that is where I will leave it at for Coffee Talks 1. Because if I linger too much more on it, I'll have to start talking about the wider story, and to avoid spoilers for that, and again that is practically the entire game, I'll have to stop here. I've talked about my favorite moments in it, and again, if it's on Game Pass, just stop watching the video and go and play it instead. It's really worth your time if you have it, and if not, it's also on Steam, where it costs a bit of money. So just, go and get it and play it. It's so good. But we're gonna move on to Coffee Talks 2, and well, I'll see you in a bit, because to start off like I always do, I just sort of wanna give you the first impressions. Coffee Talks 2 doesn't change a lot from the formula of the first game, because they very much so follow the saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. However, there are some key differences. In Coffee Talks 1 you have the overarching plot of following a writer writing her novel. In Coffee Talks 2 you don't. That plot has been moved as the writer she written her novel and it got pretty big. So she's out finding inspiration in other countries. Thereby, you sort of lose one of the things that made it easy to stay grounded, which was a general plot from one end to another. However, it's replaced with a story from the policeman, where he is on a new case, a case about vandalism. And it takes all sorts of twists and turns about ghosts, about all of these sort of crazy things, and it's pretty good. Overall, I'm pretty positive with it. There's some new characters and a lot of returning ones. The two new characters are both really interesting and really well written and fit super well into the overarching universe. And the returning characters are all also pretty good. Especially, and that's what I want to focus a little bit on, the fact that they managed to evolve their plots in a natural way that doesn't feel forced. It's pretty impressive stuff. The game developer, as an example, well, she got done developing the main part of her game. The prototype is done, so she got this contract given by her favorite publisher. And this publisher, however, is giving her really bad terms, so you follow her in her struggle on whether or not she should accept them, because it's her favorite publisher. They publish her favorite games, but the contract she got seems to be pretty shady. And all this sort of things, the vampire as an example, you follow this plotline where he is getting tired of everything really, because he has a substantial longer lifespan than normal humans since he's a vampire. So he's tried a bunch of things and well, he's getting tired of it. Modeling isn't as fun after 20 years, right? And you sort of get to follow him throughout his struggle until he realizes that he's actually pretty happy with where he is. All of it being in character, or the couple are now getting married and so on, right? Like they're all developed in a natural way, because this is not set right after Coffee Talks 1, this is set 3 years after. And therefore you can sort of evolve the plot in a way that feels natural, because it does feel natural. Of course, if you've done the same thing for 20 years, it will get boring. And of course, like after 3 years, the couple is getting married because they've already been together for 10. Like a lot of it makes natural sense. And that's really amazing. There's only one plot point that I want to focus on that I actually don't like. And unfortunately, it's one that's one of the main ones, because the police officer at some point gets some of his buddies over in your coffee shop. And they are the most generic bunch of cops I've ever seen. Some of them are literally just copy-pasted sprites of each other, what looks to be mildly altered sprites. And they talk about this completely like Some of them are literally just puns. Some of them are literally just there to make puns. And it feels so out of place for the game. I don't know why they had that there, but it shouldn't have been there. The game would have improved by just not having that segment there, and it's unfortunate it's there. However, I don't think it suffers too much overall because of it. So it's just sort of an annoying part, but it's a part that's not that big of a deal, but it's just annoying that it exists, because you see, it's like 5 minutes of bad and the rest of good, like really, really good. Because the storytelling doesn't go down, it is all fairly good. Like, and the thing is, you feel like you know these characters by now, especially if you played the first one, which you should do. You should play them in all these games, because they are literally written out to follow up on each other. I very much so recommend checking them out, as you can probably gather from the video. However, that's also it. I don't have much more to say about them, as they do follow very similar formats, as in you brew coffee, you talk to customers, and so on. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because at the end of the day, it's what makes Coffee Talks, and it's also one of the very unique aspects of the game. I will say though, I fully understand that some people definitely won't be into this type of game, but it's extremely cozy. I can recommend doing what I did with Coffee Talks, which is play for about an hour every day right before bed, or like before I get ready to go to bed. Just as sort of a book type of thing. In any case, I think they're highly worth it. They are both on Game Pass, as I've mentioned, and at the end of this video, for the rest of it, it's just gonna be me talking about the future of the channel and like a little bit about the video and stuff like that. So if you're interested in that, stick around. If you aren't, then don't worry about it. I hope you have a good day. Coffee Talks 2 was definitely more of a return to what I like, which is indie games. But it is fun from time to time to also cover AAA titles such as Jedi Survivors and Redfall, as we're going to be covering next week. And while I will say I am not necessarily positively impressed with Redfall, I did stick it out and I sort of have completed the game, so we can talk about how bad it actually is. So I'll catch you with that one if you stick around. If you don't, then thank you for watching. Just having you here is more than enough. Have a wonderful day. I hope you're all already having a good one, or gonna have a good one if you're watching this in the morning. And if you're watching this at night, then have a very good night. And I'll catch you all later. Goodbye.